Hello and welcome to Live Coffee Conversations here at the IRE 2025 show in San Antonio, Texas. This coffee conversation is being sponsored by SRS. In fact, they've sponsored our soundstage all week at this great show. We are so excited because today is day 2 of Coffee Conversations. I'm Heidi Ellsworth, and today we're going to be talking with manufacturers, technology providers, and legal, asking the same questions we asked yesterday to the contractors. And so we're going to kind of see different perspectives and how it's all coming together. We're so excited you're here. Let's get started. So first of all, welcome, gentlemen. And let's start with some introductions. Trent, can we start with you?
Sure. Trent Cotney. I'm partner at Adams & Reese and NRC General Counsel.
Awesome. Eric?
Eric Miller, Westlake Royal Building Products.
Thank you for being here. Piers?
Hi, I'm Piers Stormeyer, CEO of Eagle.
And we have some repeat. You guys, thank you so much. Piers and Trent have both been on before. Eric, we're so glad to have you here. This is great. So, okay, let's get started with talking about what we've seen so far. What are some of the hot trends that you think are going to be shaping trends, issues, all of those things that are going to be shaping the roofing industry in 2025? And if that's kind of the same as 2024, or if you're seeing some new things developing. Trent, you want to start us off?
Yeah, just a few things have changed here recently. Obviously the biggest questions that I get day in and day out are immigration and tariffs. Those are the two biggest ones that we're facing right now. What that means for contractors, what that looks like for manufacturers and distributors, and sort of navigating that, figuring out, what's noise and what's reality, and, how to address contracts, and then how to, work with your labor force to kind of deal with those issues.
So, yeah, that's all I've been hearing since I've gotten here.
Yes.
I know. It's crazy. Eric, what are you hearing?
Obviously what Trent mentioned, and then, additionally, right, all the weather events and how it relates to the different insurance criteria, the different changes with insurance. It's a big issue. Labor obviously continues to be a big issue in combination with immigration. Those are big drivers and a big focus, certainly now compared to where they were last year.
And I think it's interesting how they kind of push each other, right? All of these big weather events are pushing insurance, are pushing labor shortage. There's just materials and how it's working.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, right? It's across the country. It's hail, it's wind, it's fire, obviously. So, it's really hitting everybody where I think when you look at it historically, right, it would be an isolated event, isolated region.
Right.
It's really impacting across the U.S. now.
Yeah, it really is everywhere. Yeah. I mean, and we're in San Antonio this week, and it's, freezing every night. Yeah. I mean, literally below 32. It's been cold. Piers, what are you seeing?
I would echo everything these gentlemen have said, and then some. I think, from where we sit, insurance is a huge area of uncertainty. And, in addition to the perils that Eric just mentioned, you can even add flood to that base.
Yes.
Flooding is actually, especially as it relates to the FEMA 50/50 rule, where I live and the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, you've got thousands of homes, particularly on the coast, that you can't get permits for because the flooding is just forcing teardowns. So where you would have had re-roofing, for example, hurricanes, driven demand, you're not getting that anymore. And then we're seeing this migration away from replacement and cost value policies to actual cash value policies. So homeowners just don't have the cash to actually engage for garrison. So I think there's quite a bit of concern out there just around sustainability, not just from if you always think eco and green sustainability. Right. I think sustainability of the business model is something that we're really concerned about. You add a shrinking workforce to all of that. We've got some real problems that I think we all need to put our heads into.
Yeah, Piers, that really makes me think. I mean, when you're talking about what's going on, so let's tune into that just a little bit more on the insurance front and really how insurance companies they have to, with all of this extreme weather and what's going on, they're looking at things totally different. And as an industry, we need to look at things different too. You do so much with both insurance and roofing. What are some of the trends that you're seeing that way? As in, are we getting closer? Are there things happening where we're working together? What are some things, a little bit of your crystal ball for 2025 would be cool.
So I'll just say, I mean, yeah, we've been in this business, and I think it's that Venn diagram between the roofing industry and insurance, and how the two industries kind of interplay has changed a lot in the couple decades that I've been in this world. And I think it's changed for the better. Right? I really do. I think that there's a lot more collaboration between the insurance companies and roofing contractors, and there's been a lot of fraud that's been removed through technology and other tools, which is really good for everybody, including ultimately the consumer, the homeowner, building owners. But that said, we're also seeing this increase in costs, and prices have risen to this relatively, I mean, talk about unsustainable. Inflation and price increases, cost increases have outpaced rising incomes.
Yeah.
Or even called rising incomes, to the point where, you've got that something's going to break. Carriers are generally operating at elevated loss ratios, so there's not a lot of money being made there. And then you've got rising deductibles that just are creating a real challenge, right? So I think, really thinking about how we can navigate that's going to be pretty important.
Yeah, and it's really, I think, part of this is coming down to the durability of products. We had some people talking earlier about this, is that the durability of products is also changing the life cycle for the contractors. So there's these different things. So Eric, I would love to hear, about that.
I think it's not only the roofing contractors, right, but you look at the average consumer, right, and their awareness, right, and taking a much more active role and understand the different products that historically they may rely. So I think they're asking more of contractors to be able to articulate the value of the different products.
Yeah.
And they're doing a lot of research on their own to try to understand, what products, which ones are sustainable, how do they relate to the kind of the total cost of ownership. I think that the consumers are much more active. The insurance issue is going to continue to be a significant issue.
Yeah.
It's a big one, and it's got a lot of challenges, I think.
It's not going away.
No, not anytime soon.
And, just to add on too, I didn't mention, but even the state of Florida just made the news, a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, where the head of insurance in Florida makes some statement along, hey, we don't know if there's a future for shingles in the state. I mean, you really think about that, right? In the context of the dominant roof covering available. So you're getting all the way to the top of state government on this, and yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see how this plays out.
And you think historically, right, that statement would have never been made at that level. It's a unique time, I think, for the industry, without a doubt.
It is. In fact, I was thinking of you today, Trent, when we had some folks on the soundstage talking just about that, about, what's happening in Florida around shingles. And you're also, the coatings are on a different side, but there's also a lot going on with coatings. And talk to us about that.
Sure. So, historically, California has been where all the regulations come, and then they slowly move out east. Florida is the epicenter for insurance reform, and all of the money that the insurance lobby has nationally is being dumped into Florida right now because it is a receptive state. I live in Florida. My homeowner's insurance is doubled twice. I haven't gotten it this year. I'm sure it'll be up again.
Yeah.
And what you've seen is at least 4, rounds of legislation that has looked to curtail a lot of the stuff that is impacting insurance, or what they say is impacting insurance. So they specifically targeted the roofing market and done a variety of things, everything from eliminating assignment of benefits to having very specific warnings and requirements for advertising, to eliminating work authorizations without a good faith estimate, just stuff that if you're a storm and restoration contractor, you do daily and don't think twice about it. So the statement that was made about eliminating shingles, I don't know if that statement is now regretted, but I anticipate that, rest assured I've had a lot of conversations about that.
I'm sure.
Yeah, obviously, shingles are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. It's a dominant form of the market. But, part of what we need to do as an industry is help insurance understand that, there are other ways that you can provide value to a roof, whether it's through coatings or metal or shingles or whatever it might be, right? There's a lot of different ways, and to pick a particular product over others, I get a little... start getting a little worried about that. So, One thing that I can also, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would say that more than likely we can anticipate some more regulation changes this year that will hopefully, help eliminate some of the pressure that insurers are feeling right now in Florida.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great segue to talk about government affairs. And you started off with, that is a trend with tariffs. And also the regulatory. We had Dwayne and Deb on here earlier from governmental affairs with NRCA, really talking about what's happening, and that they're seeing a lot of regulatory. What are you kind of seeing that's going to start really affecting the roofing industry? And please feel free to go into tariffs and everything else from the current political.
Yeah, so 75,000 foot view. There are pros and cons to this administration for construction. This nothing political. Don't care if you're red or blue. I only see green, so it doesn't matter.
Can I use that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the plus side for this administration is deregulation. Regulation generally is an expensive thing for construction to have to deal with. So eliminating regulation is usually a positive. The freeze on existing regulations that were being promulgated are a good thing because most of those were onerous and most of those would have increased admin costs and overhead and things of that nature. Another plus is that there may be some tax benefits that come. If there's no tax on overtime, that's a good thing. As a business owner myself, I didn't realize how bad payroll sucks until you start doing payroll. And then you're like, oh, wow, I got to pay more on top of what I pay people. So
yes,
eliminating overtime tax would be a great thing from a federal perspective. The one thing that I want to make sure that all of our listeners understand is that regardless of what the federal government does, states can always be more onerous and more restrictive. So if you're in California, if you're in Oregon, if you're in Washington, it's going to be business as usual on state plans like OSHA and things of that nature. The bad side of stuff, I'm most concerned about immigration. I know we'll touch on it later, but immigration is the thing that worries me the most in construction. I agree with you can't have open borders, that there has to be restrictions, but I'm also an advocate for figuring out a way to allow workers to come in legally, to track them, to tax them, to have them come back and forth. We've always advocated for that on Roofing Day. We'll do it again this year. I have already seen impacts on sub-labor. So there are already the one thing that I have seen is not necessarily deportations, although I have had some instances of that happen because they have either had criminal records or been associated with some people that had criminal records. What I have heard is that subs are concerned that they will not be able to travel freely across the border. Okay, right now there's a lot of places where you cannot work. Like there's not a lot of work going on in Chicago right now, right? So what happens is these sub crews will come over, they'll work 6-8 months out of the year, then they'll go home. And they've got family at home, and they bring their money and other stuff home, and they go back and forth freely. They don't think anything of it. Well, if you can't do that anymore, then they're having to make hard decisions. So I've already told anyone that'll listen, I'm like, look, you should anticipate labor rates are going to go up. They're going to go up significantly. You need to understand that you're going to lose a lot of your sub-labor. You're going to have no-shows. I've already talked to people that have had no-shows. So you've got to anticipate this. You got to account for it. You got to have open and honest communications with your subs. And, tariffs are another thing, but I'll stop talking. So
yeah, no, I mean, that's interesting because I've heard a lot. We've been talking a lot about immigration and the companies, but I hadn't heard a whole lot about the sub-crews. So that's really interesting. Eric, what are you seeing? I mean, Westlake is such a huge, prominent company and does so much. When we're looking at tariffs, materials, supply chain, all the kind of things that you're seeing from the administration change. What's your thoughts?
It's a moving target, right? It's certainly, gauging what's going to go into effect, what the impact is. It's something we're watching very closely. We definitely have seen issues relative to immigration as well, where we've had a number of our trade partners already have issues. You think about not only what I described, people going back and forth for certain periods of months. Living in California, we've got people that travel across that daily, and it's an issue. And we've already had a number of customers, contractors, so that's already impacting. And you wonder about the ability to scale, the ability to onboard, the costs associated with all of that. I think it's a big challenge, and I think people are trying to figure out how they can navigate not knowing exactly how it's going to play out. So I think there's a lot of moving parts to it. I think people are trying to gauge what that impact, how do you de-risk what you've got exposure to. The labor part, from my perspective, is a real challenging aspect, especially for the trade base. It's really impactful. We're starting to see it already where people aren't showing up. We've had a number of customers, people have been deported. I think to scale that to any size and scale will be, I mean, it was a challenge to begin with. It's even more of a challenge going forward.
It's going to be even more
Absolutely.
now. And finding other solutions is going to...
Yeah, a lot of our focus right is on product development. How can you reduce the labor aspect? How can you, on the training aspect, we've really tried to hyper-focus on training the contractors, right, and getting communications with these contractors and giving them an opportunity to kind of implement best practices and helping them on the training aspect. Because, a lot of the smaller roofers that we deal with in a lot of cases don't have the infrastructure to onboard and train. So trying to provide a solution to them on different aspects so we can kind of fast track some of that labor opportunity.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be that combination, isn't it?
It has to be.
Automation, the products, and the labor. And Piers, you are nodding. I'm sure you see it every day with the amount of contractors you all talk to.
Yeah, it kind of goes right back to everything that we've already been talking about. I mean, all of these supply chain, the tariffs are going to have knock-on effects, the workforce, all of these things are all coming together. And then you have an incredibly, very high cost of capital still. People don't realize that. We had a couple of rate cuts, but they were like dropping the bucket. The cost for capital is very high. The cost of finance is very high. So all of these factors are turning into a just really difficult environment for our consumer.
Yeah.
That's the part that we really gotta
and need to be watching. As you're looking at the economy, let's just kind of transfer there for just a little bit. As you're looking forward to the economy, what do you see for 2025? I know you guys watch this really close.
Yeah, we have to. I think it's more of the same. I think that I 100% agree with Trent on deregulation is going to be a net good, but it's going to come with a whole lot of caveats. And again, all those factors that we just talked about. We don't see a massive rollback in interest rates at the SOFR level. I think we're going to see a lot more of the same. I think we're going to get into a plateau period of stability.
Yeah.
But like I said, the high cost of capital is not going away. We might see 50 basis points worth of improvement across the course of 25, but you're not going to get back to levels like we had a few years ago. So we're just going to have to settle in and rebalance our businesses and kind of reset our expectations.
All right.
Yeah, I think that the challenging part is the affordability part in certain parts of the country is a big issue. You add the impact of tariffs and increased labor and the rest of it. That's going to exponentially increase. We see more and more people looking to stay remodel versus relocate. And I think that's a trend you'll definitely consider. You'll see more and more of going forward. I think a lot of people are really just challenged from the affordability part. And then, you get into a house or can't afford a house, and then you add the insurance part on top of it. There's just a lot of moving parts and a lot of significant increases for the consumers.
And I think a lot of times people either realize or they realize too late that if you do move, all of a sudden everything's a little bit reset. Your insurance is reset. Your everything is reset.
Property tax and everything else associated, right?
And so it causes this. So people are kind of like looking at that going, I think we'll just stay here, which is good for the construction industry when it comes to remodeling and to re-roofing. And if a roof is leaking, it needs to be fixed. There's just no question.
And the building.
Calibrating, right? Like he said, it's the new construction relative to the remodel, right? How does that play out differently going forward?
Yeah.
When we think about a construction project, you think about new construction, you really need to be thinking about building to the policy, building to the policy. I have some buddies in the insurance business, and it's like, hey, if I designed this house, what would what would that policy mean?
Yeah.
You're effectively, on the coast of Florida, you're building a house, you build a hurricane-proof home. You can design to that environment, but it takes some thought, it takes some planning.
And money.
Yeah, and money.
Yeah.
Unless you want to self-insure, which takes even more money.
Yeah. Even more money. What economy-wise, I always love to hear what you have to say, Trent.
Yeah, so I don't think interest rates are going to go down anytime soon, which is bad because I want to refi. So, I think we will continue to see inflationary pressure. I think tariffs obviously aren't necessarily going to help that, but I do think a lot of the communication about tariff is nothing more than just noise, right? It's just the whole. What's interesting about this administration is that if you look at it, I was a political science major, so I can't help but kind of pull back on that a little bit. So
I love it.
From a strategy standpoint, it's shock and awe, right? Every single day I got to go back and I'm like, oh, I got to write something about this now. Here's the next executive. I was like, oh God.
Yeah, you're not at a loss for content.
Yeah. So that, but I think that's done intentionally. I think it's the goal is to keep the plate spinning, right?
Yeah.
So. When the tariffs were announced against Canada and Mexico originally, my phone rang off the hook. And I will tell them the same thing that I'll tell our listeners is, I'm not going to worry about anything until I see it hit my bottom line, and you just need to keep your head down and do business as usual.
Yes.
The sky's falling. Just do your job, figure out what's going to happen. Good business, sound business practices or sound business practices. And everything else, may come to fruition, it may not, but until it hits my bottom line, I don't even care about it. It's just noise and it's working.
Yeah. And one of the things we've been talking to contractors about, or contractors have been talking to us about too, is really looking at how to differentiate their business, right? That if these tariffs or if these things affect their business this way, they need to be training and getting their crews to be able to sell different products or looking at different ways of doing it, because you really don't know what's going to affect what. I mean, everything seems to have there seems to be a lot of snowballing.
Yeah, so the two things there. The first thing is, and you've heard me say this before, every contractor needs a price acceleration provision in their contract. I said it in 2004, I've said it, again and again. I said it during the material price increases. I'll say it again. A price acceleration provision basically says that if any material line item goes up by 5% or more, you're entitled to an equitable adjustment of the contract. You got to provide evidence of the cost, right? That needs to be in your contract regardless of whether it's residential or commercial. If you need it, email me. I'll just send it to go.
That's it. Put it in your contract.
So, as far as products themselves, here's what the tariffs are going to hit. They're going to hit the core components. So they're going to hit the chemicals and the stuff that makes up the products that are made here in the U.S. So it's very difficult to know at this point what is actually going to be impacted and how it's going to be impacted. Do I see the price of shingles being, hugely impacted by tariffs? I don't. I don't see that happening. But some of the low slip roofing systems that are more chemical based, there could be some impact there, and I have heard some things here and there. Obviously the 25%, tariff on steel could impact construction, but I don't know if I'd start switching gears. It's turning to, a completely different system at this point.
Yeah. One of the things that we're seeing, and again, we don't know where it's going one way or the other, but we have had this push on renewables over the last 4 years. That's kind of changing with our infrastructure, some different grants, different things coming through. Talk a little bit about sustainability, but also I really want to talk about energy because there was our industry has seen a lot of success with the energy savings, the insulation amount, and all of those kind of things. So, Eric, what are some of the things, as we're looking at some of these changes in, I guess I'm going to say focus on either away from sustainability, away from some of those things, but the demand still seems to be out there.
Yeah, I think on the energy front, as an industry, we've tried to develop a mechanism to quantify what that value is. So for the Tile Roof Institute, we've implemented decks across the 10 climate conditions and benchmark against our product relative to others. So it's really a combination of what really is that impact, right? And then what's the total consumption of energy. So you look at it overall, you look at relative rising costs, and it's what can you do to mitigate that risk? In some cases, right, it's being able to quantify that value to consumers so they can actually see what that equates to. And in some cases, it's how can you get below a certain tier energy situations, right? How do you get below a certain tier, right? So you can more readily do it. But from our perspective, it's quantifying, being able to give consumers a vehicle to go out and be able to put in their area code, their zip code, what that looks like. So it's a credibility thing, right? We can all say our products do X, Y, and Z, but it's being able to quantify exactly what that is.
And putting that together. And I know you do a lot in solar.
Yes.
Yeah. And so one of the things I found interesting in this last year is word coming out of Texas that we don't really care about federal tax incentives. We don't care. I mean, everybody wants them, but they don't care. They're like, I just don't want my energy to go out in the middle of the winter, or I don't want my house to freeze. And so there's now a sudden this demand for solar that is being driven purely by the consumers. What are you seeing that way, Piers?
Well, Texas is one of the fastest states for growth in the solar industry. And solar's taken a thrashing.
Yeah.
Mostly due to the, again, high cost of capital and interest rates and financing challenges. I think it's really important, and I 100% agree with everything that's been said. But going right back to the cost, whether you're looking at a flat roof, you're a building owner, you're an HOA, or you're a homeowner in a single family home, all these costs are going up. If you can find an ROI by optimizing the energy profile of that property, and that starts with having the data to understand if there is an ROI of that, which, and there's a lot of great technology out there that can give you that information, including ours. Plug. Okay. But that savings can get plowed back into the total cost of ownership and help bring down some of those costs. And I think that's really important. And it kind of goes back to when you're engaging in those projects. I think the homeowners, the building owners, kind of need to be able to see that whole impact of that energy efficiency on the project. And I think if you're not doing that, you're kind of doing a disservice, and you're also putting yourself in a competitive disadvantage.
Yeah, and when you look at, I don't know if you were able to listen to Reed Ribble's The American Dream keynote. I thought that was really well done. And, one of the things he's talking about, too, is how we are being driven on some levels. Like, how often do we want to replace a roof, or do we want to have a good roof? How much do we want to stand on our own? And that we have the money in the system on some levels to start becoming more sustainable. I mean, as in off grid, I guess is what I'm saying. And that seems to be, it's interesting to see that switch, right? From just being purely driven by the government to now being driven by, I don't want my house, I don't want to be inconvenienced.
You bet.
And when you're talking about Florida.
Yeah. I think more and more homeowners are looking for longer lasting roof systems.
Yeah.
And there's some insurance interplay there. In fact, one of the recent changes said that typically an insurance company will put significant pressure on you to replace a roof if it's 15 years or older, right? Now, under the new laws, you have the capability to get a inspector or consultant out there to verify it's got at least 5 more years of life, and then they have to provide you coverage at that point. But I think sustainability, regardless of politics, is something that we as a roofing industry need to embrace. And the reason for that is everything is interconnected, right? Our labor shortage, the lack of implementation of technology, the lack of sustainability, we're coming to, and I've said this for you, you've heard me.
I know.
We're coming to a point where the only way that we're going to be able to meet demand is that if we evolve.
Yeah.
So, and I had the opportunity, my booth is like right in next to all the European associations and everything. And I talked to all those guys, and they view roofing completely different, right? They're looking to build roofs that last 100 years.
Yeah.
And they put that on there, and that's how they do things, right? And we have this mindset that our roof is going to be changed every 10 to 15 years. And I think we need to kind of move away from that mindset a little bit and figure out a way to keep that lasting longer.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. And when you travel the world, you look at roofing systems in other development countries, nobody does it like we.
Yeah.
And in terms of just the amount of replacements, and I agree that we've got to evolve.
Right.
We might be at peak carbon. And use that one. No. I think we that evolution really going to be very, very positive. Actually, massive opportunities for the contract.
Yes.
About being able to offer proactive roof asset management at a residential level like we do at a commercial level, you can start unlocking even subscription models which provide recurring revenue and is much more consistent. It takes some of that volatility out, and that enables you to bring your overhead down and potentially creates a really profitable and frankly higher quality business model.
And sustainable. I mean, that's the thing. When I think about all the services we have just on our house that we know they're going to come in out every year. They're going to inspect. They're going to look at it. We know we're safe for I'm thinking of our chimneys, but that's really, roofing has missed out on that on a residential side.
It's interesting, right? Historically, we part of a company that did a lot of work in Europe and Australia, and just the way that they view the roof, right? Like it is a trade, it's a craft, right? And they build roofs to last for a long time, right? And I think the thing that they've done really well is to be able to have a workforce that understands that quality, but they've also educated the consumers, right? And they're not looking for the lowest cost solution. They're looking for the best roof, right? And I think the opportunity lies in how do you help educate the roofers and the consumers on what the value is, right? And looking at it outside of the disposable mindset. I think we've looked at it industry-wide for quite a long time.
Yeah, getting away from the disposable. I love that. Now, yesterday we did talk about sustainability and really was interesting in talking to the contractors. I'll give a little bit away from yesterday, but they really immediately went to recyclability and recycling off the websites and off the job sites and landfills. What are you seeing? I mean, it seems like recycling is one of those things that you hear a lot and then you hear nothing. You hear a lot and you hear nothing. Eric, what are you seeing on that front?
So you do hear it kind of comes in peaks and valleys, right? I think you hear probably less on the recycle part from a long-term perspective and more on what else is part of the sustainability, right? Like, what does it mean relative to freight? What does it mean as far as other factors besides just the recycle part? It's kind of, I look at it very similar to green building versus energy efficiency, right? Like, it's taking a whole different perspective, and I think people are looking at different things relative to sustainability than they did historically.
Yeah. One of the things we are hearing is in California, there are large deposits. I think I'm saying that word wrong, but with the landfills, where they're actually having to pay up front and then long as they recycle off the roof. What are you seeing on that, Trent?
Yeah. California has some very specific restrictions, permitting requirements that are enhanced as far as eliminating construction debris.
Yeah.
So, and that's going to continue.
It's not going anywhere, anything. I want to shift over a little bit to technology. So I'm going to start with you, Piers. AI is, everybody's talking about it, right, as a trend. You didn't bring it up at the beginning, but this is something that I think everybody's trying to grapple with. So along with AI and just overall the technology of processing and building, we're also seeing the influx of robotics, right? And because we have to have some solutions for that labor thing. What are you seeing?
So AI is a little bit of a good news, bad news story.
Yeah.
The good news is this AI thing isn't a flash in the pan. I think it's going to be here for a while. When I was at this event, we were talking last year. I think I was talking a little bit about what's giving rise to all of this innovation, which is a lot to do with GPU technology and what NVIDIA is doing, and really the cost of compute storage has dropped to a level that these models are available and you can do so much more.
Right.
And it's moved so fast and so far in just the last 12 months that it's incredible. So, the good news is that there's entire processes that are going to be completely eliminated or radically redesigned and optimized. There's a lot of back office stuff that you can get done. I mean, there's estimation, there's building material lists, there's research. Anybody who Perplexity.ai just announced their own deep research tool that's freely available. So I would challenge anybody, including everybody sitting around this table, to go into the LLM, I write them to do an analysis of your business, and we'll read that 30-page report, and what comes out, it will blow you away. It will absolutely blow you away.
Really?
So the technology and the ability to just get much better and much faster with Gen AI is amazing. And then Gen AI is really just it's really just the starting point to what we call agentic AI, which is being able to effectively ask that virtual agent to do complex tasks. Give Mrs. Jones a good, better, best estimate. This tower from various sources, and it's just going to do the job. Now the bad news is, if you're not doing these things, you're going to find yourself left in the dust by your competitors. The good news is that there's such a massive opportunity to improve our businesses, and the roofing industry itself is naturally anti-fragile. It's a resilient industry. You're going to need to have people that are going to climb up on ladders or camera on those shingles or install that tile or whatever that operation is. We're not going to have robot roofers anytime soon. So we have this opportunity to not be completely blown out of the water by AI, which is what a lot of industries are really concerned about right now, but actually harness that and improve our industry with it.
Right. But technology will start filling in on the labor shortage? I mean, when there's a need, it seems like we start finding things to fit that.
Yeah, I think that there's no getting around the workforce challenges and those rising costs of the same. But I think what you're going to be able to do is offset some of those costs by removing some of the costs of your general administration line on your P&L, and maybe even some of your sales and marketing some of that expense can collapse in order to help offset some of those rising labor costs.
That's interesting. What are you seeing on technology side?
Same thing, obviously, he mentioned. Additionally, right, you look at the limited labor force, right? You look at a lot of technology around like e-commerce and the platform, and what can you do to eliminate or create situations where you can have that online where people have access to it. You're not having to staff up historically like you did, where you're onboarding a bunch of administrative staff. Like you could do it online, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to continue that development where you can give people access real-time information, whether it's inventory orders, deliveries, whatever aspect it is, right? I think it improves the efficiency, helps with the labor model, and it's just something I think going forward helps solve part of the equation relative to labor.
Yeah, we have seen, just leaps and bounds in technology around distribution. I mean, when you look at what distribution is finally, I don't think we're there yet, but we're getting closer to online ordering. You've been a big part of that, being able to provide the data that needs to make that happen. And also then the tracking and everything. You just look at our distributors, they're totally different than they were 5 years ago when it comes to technology.
Well, we've implemented a e-commerce platform, right? In parts of our business, we have over 80% of people doing online ordering.
Really?
A few years ago was not nearly that percentage. So, people adapt. The roofing industry is very adaptable, right? If you give them a solution and you can make it simple and show the value proposition of it, they'll adopt it.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, I know this is one of your favorite topics.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just did a presentation on AI in construction for the Inspire 25 event, and one of the things that was interesting in the comments and questions is how few people have actually used it in our industry. And, I will tell anybody that's listening out there, the free stuff doesn't give you an idea of what is truly capable. So if you're using free Copilot, free ChatGPT, whatever, that's a great search engine.
Yeah.
But once you start paying, and I've got several pro versions, plus.
Yeah.
I calculated it's added about an hour to an hour and a half on my day. And it's
added.
So you can't pay me enough to get an hour of having that amount of time. And it's like having an executive assistant that instantaneously responds and learns. And it once you start playing with it and you learn how to use it, it's very easy to see its capability and what it can do for you.
Yeah.
Now, it never replaces, I'm not using it for legal work. I can't do that. But as far as understanding things, doing things, how can you use it in construction? You can use it, obviously, marketing, customer service,
Right.
predictive analysis. As Pierce said, analyzing your business. It is absolutely amazing, and I encourage anybody that's like, AI, it's like Bitcoin. I don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
Go out, start playing with it, and you'll start to see exactly what I saw. It is, if you are not using it, here's the difference, is that your competitors will be much more efficient and have much more time to run laps around you because they are automating it. They're using AI to do a lot of the stuff that you're doing.
That, I have to, I use it, but I have not analyzed my business yet. So guess what I'm doing?
It's gonna be scary.
I'm gonna be crying.
You're gonna find stuff out that you should have.
It's stunning.
You should have known.
Yeah.
Didn't know, but yeah, you're gonna see. We're just at the beginning. I mean, scratching the surface. But you start getting to this complex agentic AI, and you just start thinking about your business, and being able to tell the AI that I need you to go and email photos and status updates to all of my customers, all the jobs that are going. And oh, by the way, I need you to do that every single day. And it's just done. It's just done. You just hit enter and it's done. It's going to do it. And it's gonna, like Trent said, it's going to learn. And then you're going to get to the point where the customer is going to interact, and it's going to ask for more photos and more feedback. And I don't want this amount of many. I want less. And it's going to be able to modify and adapt to that request. And these are things that would take a lot of staff, a lot of time, and a lot of errors, and all of that's just going to be completely automated.
And it's all happening.
The customer home, the experience, which I talked about 80% of online orders. This isn't how people prefer to engage. So that the homeowners are expecting this experience. I was riding around with a friend of mine in their Tesla yesterday, and was kind of commenting, and she said the best part is I bought this car on my phone.
I'll take it.
Like, let that sink in, right?
Yeah.
This car on my phone. That's just what the expectation of the consumer is getting to. So the old way is just not gonna be good enough.
So I was talking to a lady, a contractor, and they bought a company out of Arizona that does all their sales virtually, 100%. They have nobody in the field, so everything is done virtually. She's like, we are now analyzing them. I bet they're putting their business into chat. It's AI to analyze it, but they're analyzing that now and trying to figure out how they're going to take that to all of their businesses for exactly what you're saying. And we're seeing it also in the new software, the technology that's coming out. We have many that are offering instant quotes that have people who talk to. I mean, there's one on the show floor that I just saw. I'll put it out. Roof Scout. Scout actually talks to your customers for you. And I just want us all to remember this moment. And next year, where we're at on this, because it's going to be totally different.
Okay. Well, and I think the takeaway, the most important takeaway here is it's maybe not all, but it's nearly all upside for the roofing industry.
Yeah.
Because it's a complex, the core operation of what we do is so complex, and we're so far away from being able to have a robot climb up a ladder and do the mechanical operational work of roofing.
Right.
So all of this tech is just going to be additive. And you can't say the same for the legal profession, right?
Yeah.
That's going to get completely turned on its head. Yeah. So that's the good news.
Yeah. It's going to take... And you know what? I think that kind of leads us into another topic that I'd just like to hit on here, and that is recruitment. The recruitment into our industry and what NRCA is doing with Skills USA, what they're doing with getting more people in here. Because to your point, Piers, skilled labor is what's going to be valued as AI takes a lot of these other jobs and makes them, a return bet. What are you seeing? And you're involved. I mean, we're all involved in the CTE, but what are you seeing on that level?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, this is another great news story too, because I think you're starting to see people figure out that there's nothing wrong with going into the trades. It's an honor. You're seeing Mike Rose leading a lot of that. There's a lot of really, really good work that's being done that's showing that it's not a bad idea. It's a great idea, and it is one of those things one of those areas that is pretty resilient and isn't as fragile as some of these other kind of thought worker type of professions. And you can make a lot of money, have a really great life, and you're actually doing something where you're building something tangible. And I think I think that's really important. And so I think there's a lot of really good work that's going into this, and Clemson and Skills USA and some of these partnerships are enabling contractors to get some education from top tier education sources that just didn't exist before. So you don't have to trade that off like we used to in the past. I'm excited about that. I think that's really important for kind of trying to solve and head off the workforce challenges.
So I want your pitch for Clemson. Everybody.
So that Clemson curriculum is by far the best and the most cost-effective way to bring new people into the industry at this speed.
Yeah.
And I'll keep going on that a little bit because we send all of our new hires through that program. I think everybody should. The way that you're currently trying to train people is so much more expensive than going to Dr. Gajar. And 100% of my product, my salespeople, my marketers, they're all going through that to get that baseline education, and it's great. And it's something you can put on your resume. You got that orange paw, and it's a great program, and we're really pumped to be part of it.
For anybody out there who might be wondering, this is a Roofing Alliance initiative where you can get training through Clemson University. It's continuing education. It is phenomenal, all online, 3 courses with certification, and Pierce has been the leader of it, so it's been pretty exciting.
I passed, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
Yeah.
I still have to take mine and pass. So, Eric, what are you seeing around CTE, this next generation of vocational schools? What is Westlake in your involvement?
It's an interesting thing. I think we're, with the college tuition being so visible now to so many people, I think it's forcing people to go back and look at things. I think the trades are figuring out different ways to recruit differently than they have in the past.
Yes.
You're right. Like there's a lot of money to be made. People can have a good, stable, long-standing career, not have the risk, I think, historically they've had with college in some cases. I think that it's starting to kind of filter all the way down to the high schools where they're not so actively pushing that as the only option, right? Which is a big step, right? In which with what we've historically done, where the benchmark on how they're judged is how many kids did I send to college, what percentage. So I think it's an evolution. I think people are looking at things differently. I think the cost of college has been a big part of that.
Yeah.
And I just think when you look at increasing wages and labor and the rest of it, it'll become more and more attractive. The more visible we can make that, and then develop training programs, right? Like that can really help people get onboarded and really, I think, create a career map for them, right? Whether it's the initial trade part, but there's other parts of that, like, you've got a certain shelf life if you're electrical or whatever it is, right? And then, but there's next step opportunities, right? And it's like, how do you kind of create a clear career ladder for some of these people that are looking to get into it, but maybe there's a concern of what happens when I've been in the career or the industry for 20 years. There's other options.
Yeah, there is. And even coming from other careers and other trades, we're seeing that there is this shift into roofing. And I think that's been a lot to do with how much everyone has worked in the industry, including the NRCA, to really lift our reputation and to be attraction. You have been very involved, Trent. What are you seeing as the future for us on that?
Yeah, I think the associations have led the way, as Pierce said. I think the Roofing Alliance has done a tremendous job, with Skills USA and the Clemson and everything else that they've done to promote, not only vocational training, but having that path through college if you want to do that. But other associations have done well too. So you look at like Western States, who I think just this past year had a scholarship for Skills USA.
Davis.
Yeah. And, I know FRSA and a lot of the other associations that I work with have, committees that are dedicated to, bringing people from high school into the workforce. So I think that's important. I've even my son, I'd love him to get into roofing somehow. I mean, he's been on the road with me since he's 2, going to different expos. So I don't care what he does as long as he's in the industry.
Right.
So,
I didn't think both my kids would be in, but they are. So there you go.
All right. Well, and, you mentioned 20 years in the roofing industry, and what are you going to do afterwards? Like, the answer is you do 20 years in the roofing industry, the vast majority, the answer might be don't really need to worry about it, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe you're hanging out on a sailboat somewhere because, you do really, really well in 2 decades in the roofing industry, and that can't be said for everything.
So, yeah. So I would like to, I have a couple more things, but first of all, I just get the wisdom that is sitting at this table. I'd like to say, ask you to kind of think about, what do you see, and I'm going to start with you, Paris, what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities that contractors should be looking at and really working on their business for 2025? What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, this is almost, we've touched on so much of this, but I think it's, just a little bit of a story here, and, kind of an adjacent industry, solar. And solar was booming a couple of years ago, driven by a lot of subsidies, a lot of tax, a lot of tax subsidies, a lot of really low interest rates. And there's just a lot of sloppy work being done. I mean, there's, you're putting estimates out that have just a ton of waste in there, because you figure there's enough margin in there that'll take care of it. It'll be fine. And speed, let's just go and sell everything we can sell and go. And we've seen a massive contraction in solar. There are a shocking number of customers that we had, large ones. My top 10 list is completely decimated of our solar customers that just went out of business or shrunk to the point where, they're just not operating the same way. So now's an opportunity, and it's absolutely imperative that we get efficient and we take advantage of all of these tools. And you look at your processes, and you try and, like Trent said, you absolutely have to use the tools around and get that extra hour and a half and put that to the bottom line. And if you don't do that, I think you're going to have a rock mark to.
Yeah, great. Eric,
a lot of the same things we've discussed, right? I think for the contractors, it's knowing all the different implications relative to insurance, being able to understand what the consumers are looking for. He mentioned about the Tesla, right? Being able to tailor your sales message, your value proposition to a different buyer, right? It's how do you create that Amazon experience, right, for customers, and it's a different thing, right? When you look at the people coming into the new home opportunity, right? It's a different buying mentality. So I think for roofing contractors is, how do you continue to develop that? How do you continue to be able to upsell the value that you provide versus maybe just the low cost alternatives?
Yeah.
So I think
staying relevant. Yeah. Really, always doing. Trent.
Yeah, I think the kind of my advice to contractors kind of looking forward through 2025 is, business is business, and be purposeful and consistent in everything you do.
Yeah.
Right. Showing up is 99% of everything that you need to do. So, watch the news closely. Tune into Roofer's Coffee Shop, because that's where I go to figure out what's going on. So
thank you, Trent. We try to keep it all out there. That speaking of, I'm going to end on this. Speaking of relevant and staying tuned in. One of the things that has happened this week is we've had a number of contractors actually approach us wanting help on what to do if ICE shows up on the job site. And so we have asked Trent to have a special coffee conversations next Friday, the 28th, and it'll be at our regular time, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. But it's going to be Trent, and we may have some other folks on there. We're not sure, but right now we just know it's Trent for sure. And we're going to be talking about that. Can you kind of take us out a little bit on some of the things that you're going to touch on next week, and how important this is, that no matter who you are in roofing, that you know your rights and you know what to do when this may happen on your job sites?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of what we're going to discuss is what an employer needs to understand if ICE shows up, at your warehouse, at a job site, at a location. What are things that you can do and what you can't do? And we're also going to talk about, what can you do from an employee standpoint? What assistance can you offer? What should you not do?
Yeah.
That's kind of where I come in and say, watch out here. And we may get into a little bit of I-9 compliance as well, talking a little bit about, best practices, things to watch out for. What do I see coming out of the administration? I've spent a lot of time here talking to Dwayne, talking to Craig Breithaupt, talking to lobbyists, getting a better understanding of, obviously I hear a lot, but I want to hear what's going on from them as well. So it's going to be full circle, soup to nuts, anything that they'd want to know, and then I assume, ask questions. They can ask questions as well. So.
Oh, they're going to be asking. There's going to be a lot of questions, and this is really what Coffee Conversations is all about. Is how it started during COVID, that we get out there ahead of it and help people. And because of you gentlemen, we're helping people right now. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trent, next Friday, we'll do this again.
I'll be there.
Virtual. If you are, stay tuned. We're going to be bringing more interviews from the Soundstage. This is our live Coffee Conversations Day 2, and we're on the Coffee Conversations Soundstage, sponsored by SRS. We'll be back soon. Thank you for being with